Hi everyone, this is For the Love of Comics, and in this video we're continuing our look at Alan Moore and Dave Gibbons' classic comic Watchmen with a look at a very special edition of Watchmen, Watchmen Noir, the hardcover, larger black and white edition of Watchmen. If you're interested in a general introduction review of Watchmen, check out my What is Watchmen video linked above. But otherwise, let's take a closer look at Watchmen Noir. Noir is apparently a series by DC Comics in which they publish black and white editions of some of their most famous comics. The black and white in these editions are completely finished pages, that means they're penciled and inked and lettered completely, unlike things like the unwrapped editions, which feature the story in its penciled form but without the final inking. I believe the Noir editions are usually the same size as the unwrapped or deluxe editions, but Watchmen Noir is a bit larger than other Noir editions I've seen. However, it's not quite as large as Absolute Watchmen. Therefore, in terms of size, it falls somewhere between the original issues and trade paperbacks and Absolute Watchmen. The first thing that strikes you about Watchmen Noir is exactly how thick and sturdy it is. It's just as thick, if not a little bit thicker, than Absolute Watchmen, even though it contains none of the extras the Absolute edition does. This is due not just to the extremely thick binding, but also for the thick and creamy paper that's been used for printing the pages. And unlike the highly glossy pages of this Batman Noir edition, Watchmen Noir's pages are not glossy, and the thick yet non-glossy paper works really well for the grim and stark world of Watchmen. There's no dust jacket for this book. It's printed directly onto the card and features plain black end papers, both in the front and the back, and uses a completely black and white scheme for the cover and every part. There is no other color anywhere in this book. I have to admit that I found it a little strange to see Watchmen in black and white the first time I read this book. That's because Watchmen is so much about the colors and the color coding and the way the palette doesn't work to expectations either of superhero comics or other comics, that taking that away reduces on first glimpse the impact that the story has had on us before. However, since I don't think this is an edition meant for people reading Watchmen at the first time, I don't think the point of it is to say that this is somehow better than what was originally published. What the black and white allows you to do is to notice things in a different way. The art and line work has somehow become more democratic without the colors highlighting or obscuring certain things. And in some ways you read it even harder than you read the original because you're trying to spot what it is that you should be looking at rather than the colors drawing or diverting your attentions from them. Of course, that's a bit simplistic because the colors in the original weren't really used to code things in as far as notice this or notice that sort of way. And they did lend a psychedelic and hallucinatory feel to the entire story. But there is something to be said for the different kind of bleakness that this black and white gives to the story. A couple of things that I think work really well are heights and perspectives from above, where I think Dave Gibbons' architecturally perfect compositions really get highlighted by us noticing lines and angles, perhaps more than we would have in the colored version. Every time the camera moves up, the sense of vertigo and depth is incredible. Of course, that might be the case with the original for you as well. Another thing I noticed in the black and white edition for the first time is that the word balloons aren't completely round or curved. They're sort of jagged, actually. Similarly, the black and white has also allowed me to appreciate Dave Gibbons' lettering in a way that perhaps I hadn't before. Probably because I was distracted by the great art. I also think that the transition to the prose sections at the end of every chapter are smoother in the black and white edition. For some people, moving to big blocks of black and white text after color pages might seem a little disruptive, particularly if it's supposed to be read as part of the story and, not letters to the editor and things like that. And I know that the first time I read Watchmen, I wasn't really interested in reading prose. I just wanted to keep going with the comics pages. In the black and white, it seems less differentiated. It seems more part of the same. And I think may be able to override that kind of block that I had more effectively. Which is of course not to say that the colors are not important. When we look at spreads like this, we can see that the black and white has made everything very stark and even, putting our focus on these 9 grids on each page and still continuing with the velocity velocity of storytelling that pattern allows you to do, but you lose the blinking neon light creating that 5/4 pattern that we had looked at before, and that is definitely, in my opinion, a loss. The Mars sequence obviously is another chapter in which the absence of the vivid and interesting colors really changes the way you would read the story. There's something about this that just isn't the same when you read it like this, even though you're probably noticing details and intricacies that you hadn't over here. But it's really not fair for me to call it a loss, because this is obviously not meant to be a replacement for Watchmen in the original or the recolored versions, but really an exercise in displaying to you art, lettering, details, draftsmanship, layout, design, structure, and also allowing the story to be seen in a different way than it has been before. This book is for fans, for people who want to study it and people who want to take a different view on it. It's a wonderful edition. It's solidly made, fantastically produced, and is fascinating for comparison and standalone reading. If you're only going to buy one copy of Watchmen, this would definitely not be it. But if you ever wanted to double dip on a hardcover, this might not be a bad way to go. It would definitely be better than having two completely similar editions, in my opinion. And that's all for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Leave your comments and questions below if you have any, and thank you for watching.